Hello and welcome to Cuppa with a Scientist, a brand new podcast by Loughborough University that will interview a different scientist each week about their academic journey to the top. We will discuss how they went from a confused teenager choosing A-level subjects to a leader in their field, with plenty of weird and wonderful stories in between and golden nuggets of advice for those aspiring to get into science. As well as keeping your ears and brain entertained, we hope this podcast will dispel the myth that all scientists wear white lab coats and give you an insight into how vast the world of science really is. And because the makers of this show are painfully British, we'll be doing it all over a good cuppa. So stick the kettle on and settle in. Before we get stuck into this episode, a quick bit about your host. I'm Meg and I'm a PR and Communications Officer at Loughborough University, and I'm also an aspiring scientist. I made the tough decision to return to university 2 years ago to pursue my love of biology, and I found podcasts to be an incredibly helpful resource when making this decision, though slightly field specific. From health sciences to social sciences, we'll cover it all in this podcast and show you how vast science really is. And hopefully you'll pick up a few tips and tricks along the way to help you on your journey to becoming a scientist. Hi Amanda, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you. First of all, the important question, what mug have you gone for and why?
Oh, so I've got my Brummy Bird. I don't know if you can see that, but hopefully you can. My Brummy Bird mug, because I am a Brummy Bird. I was born and raised in Birmingham and I still live there. So it felt appropriate to come and have my Brummy Bird mug today.
Fabulous, representing. I've gone for, on the animal theme, I suppose. It's a little seal. Not the easiest to drink out of, but it's pretty cute. So
No, we don't want to tip any.
No. And we asked you to bring an artefact with you connected to your work. What have you gone for?
So I've brought a chocolate lion bar, and the main reason for that is that a lot of my work is based around diet, physical activity and weight management. So it felt appropriate to bring some chocolate and talk about that. The other key thing about this particular lion bar is that it tells you how many calories are in the actual lion bar, but also how much dancing you would have to do in order to burn off the calories in the lion bar. And that's, again, one of my particular kind of scientific interests, is different ways of presenting information to the public to help them make decisions about what to eat and buy. So that was the main reason, I guess.
And out of curiosity, how much dancing would I have to do?
Out of curiosity, I can answer that question. So you will have to do 25 minutes of dancing in order to burn off 207 calories in the lion bar. So you have to decide whether the lion bar is worth the calories.
Brilliant. So what is the weirdest thing you've had to do as part of your career?
I'd say, and this takes me back to my undergraduate dissertation, where I had this crazy idea that I could take polo mints and then hang them in a river, and then they would dissolve at a given rate depending how fast the river's flowing. So I set up all these polos in the lab with controlled rates of flow to calibrate this simple relationship. And then I took these devices, which were essentially stakes with polos hanging from them, and put them in rivers, and then weighed the polos after a given amount of time and could tell how much polo had been lost and therefore the average flow of the river. So I think that's probably the craziest I've done.
I did not expect you to say that. That's fantastic. What did you conclude from your polo experiment?
It does actually work. I mean, it's
right.
A bit of a messy way of measuring river flow, but it does actually work.
At university, I'm doing biology at the moment. There's not many females on my course. It's got better, I think, but it's still, there's a handful of us doing kind of what people class as a hard science. Did you find that? Is that one of the things that you encountered?
Not particularly. I don't think it's something that sort of got in my way. I mean, I think, science generally does have a kind of aura around it, that it's something that men do and it isn't something that women do. But we know women are just as good at science as men, so it's not something that I particularly had a problem with. And I think lots of the people that I work with have always been very supportive of women. I've always found men very supportive of my career. So yeah, it's not something I've particularly had a problem with, but I know, that's not the case for all women. I think there are lots of women who have faced barriers to being, good scientists because of kind of the prevailing views around what science is. But, I think things are changing. I think hopefully, Meg, by the time you finish, you might take a few more steps towards equality in science.
So do you have any words of wisdom for students aspiring to be in a position like yours, in a career, research field like yours?
I think I go back to one of my earlier remarks, which was the need to be resilient to rejection. We all encounter rejection in different ways in our lives, and professionally, and being able to cope with rejection professionally, thinking about how can I learn from this experience, how can I make that research paper or grant proposal better, how can I give a better interview next time I'm being talked to on the TV. How do we do these things? That's all about a lifelong learning process, but being resilient to rejection, not staying down for a long time, bouncing back and thinking, okay, that didn't work, I'll try something different.
Do you think as well that with having the resilience, it needs to be paired with having like a real deep passion and belief in what you're doing? Because I can imagine the first rejection makes you question everything. What am I doing? Am I on the right path? Is this worth doing? So do you think having that passion and care is key as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Having that set of core values as to why you're doing this. It's not, we talked a lot about the how to do the research, but it's, why am I doing this research? What is your deep motivation? Is it that you want to be, in a little way, part of the solution set? And that can be a really very, very strong motivator and help sustain you through the ups and downs. And that's the reality of being a researcher, just like in any other career.
Early career researchers that think my research could potentially be quite controversial and divide public opinion. I know you said about, kind of not taking it personally, don't engage, but when you're trying to find your feet in the field, is there any kind of specific advice for people that are in that position?
Yeah, so I think, that's a good example of an important time to find a mentor who can guide you, who can help you think about that kind of controversial topic. And also potentially could help you, deal with the media and how to approach questions if your research is controversial. One of the things that I always sort of tell people, because I get asked this question quite a bit actually, and one of the things that I say, or one of the ways in which I respond, is that lots of things in life are controversial. So my research is about health and medicine, and so there are lots of things in those domains that were hugely controversial, but yet have had great outcomes. So chemotherapy was hugely controversial when it was first developed. People couldn't understand why you would give people toxins or poisons to make them better. But could you imagine a world now without chemotherapy? Could you imagine all those people that would have died if those doctors had stopped developing chemotherapy because people felt that they were doing the wrong thing? IVF, hugely controversial. Could you imagine the lives of those kids that didn't have IVF, or donor transplants? That's another hugely controversial. So how many more lives would have been lost? So I think sometimes you've got to stick to your guns, and you've got to kind of accept that, yeah, it is a controversial topic, but there's a reason. It's not just controversial for the sake of it, that the output is for the greater good, and that's an important output.
So I know one of the forecasting projects that you're doing looks at extreme indoor temperatures and how you can kind of take action now to help those communities. Can you tell me a bit more about this project, please? And I know you've been kind of overseas doing the work. So if you could tell us how it was experiencing that yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, so this is a project led by Kate Goff, also in the geography department, where we've been looking at extreme temperatures inside people's homes and workplaces in Ghana as a first step. So again, using the tiny tag to monitor those temperatures in a large number of homes and workplaces as the first step. And then the second step is to then help communities identify affordable measures for managing those very high temperatures. What if we change the design of the roof to have more shade? If we improve ventilation, if we make the roof more reflective, how might we use vegetation and shade in the urban environment? So these are all the sorts of questions that we've been exploring. But having gone through and done this field work on the ground, I've encountered some really extraordinary temperatures in people's homes. So the record temperature here in the UK is around 38, 39 degrees Celsius, which would just be fairly commonplace in some people's homes in Ghana. And indeed, we've seen temperatures into the mid 40s degrees Celsius in a home. And so once again, I'm emphasizing the fact that the tropics, in terms of humid heat and its impact on people's health and livelihoods, that's where the front line of climate change really is.
One of the trials that we're about to start is called Just One. And Just One is about just getting the public to reduce their calorie intake by just 100 calories and increasing their step counts per day by just 1,000. And the reason why we're doing that study is because everyone thinks that obesity is caused by, massive overeating and gluttony, and it's not true. At a population level, obesity is caused, if you like, by the fact that all of us just overeat a little bit too much every day. So if I can get you to reduce your calorie intake by just a little bit, i.e. just 100, then actually we could make a real difference to levels of obesity in the UK and throughout the world. So we just want people to make small changes. So 100 calories, we go back to the chocolate digester that I talked about at the start. All we're asking people to do is reduce their calorie intake by one chocolate biscuit a day. And actually over a week, that's 700 calories. And so you can start to see how very small changes can actually make quite a big difference to the amount of calories that you consume in the day. But most of the work that we do, I call it kind of, I'm told off for saying this, but it's kind of down the pub science. So if I went to the pub and talked to people and they said, oh, you're a professor of behavioural medicine, what do you do? And I talked to them about the two examples that I've given you, they would get it. They understand. It's something that they can resonate, with. So yeah, I call it down the pub science, but apparently it's not good. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's really important that we do work that the public understand and can connect with, because ultimately it's about them.
Do you think, in your expert opinion, is kind of COP26 one to watch?
I think that we are now within a critical decade. This decade really matters for what will come in the future. COP is part of a continuum of negotiations, of advance in scientific understanding, and of determination to address what many are beginning to realize is an immense challenge ahead. But I certainly think we're at the start of a critical decade. So the kind of things that I'm most concerned about are what happens to the great snow and ice stores of the world. Some have called them the water towers of the world. So you think of the huge stores of snow and ice in the Himalayas, which sustain the livelihoods, the energy, the crops, and everything downstream for literally billions of people. And those snow and ice stores are some of them are in a very fragile state, and we're not quite sure how that's going to play out, but it clearly has massive implications for many people. Likewise, in our part of the world, we're extraordinarily vulnerable to extreme drought. So the risk of more severe and longer lasting droughts is something that we really have to confront and start planning for.
And would you say being open is a theme you should carry across different areas as a scientist? Because I know obviously you mentioned that your A-level choices weren't really connected to where you are today. Was that just being open to possibilities and different things that were presented to you? Because I think a lot of people worry that the decisions they make at A-levels or going to university, that's setting them on a certain road.
Yeah, I mean, I think my view is that you go to university for a broader education, a broader experience, and whatever you do there doesn't have to determine what you do later on. I think if you're building skills and you're building kind of a scientific inquiry and a scientific mind, you can apply those skills to whatever you might end up doing in the end. But I also think you have to grab those opportunities when they come your way. So just because, you might have done engineering to begin with, that doesn't mean that you couldn't do sports science. There's a huge part of engineering is, fed into sports science and vice versa. So it's kind of keeping an open mind to opportunities that might come and not define yourself too early, because you can do whatever it is that you want to do. It's just making sure that you've got those good skills.
And I'm going to put you on the spot with this final question. If you had to describe your career in 3 words, only 3, what would they be? I told you I was putting you on the spot.
That's a really hard question. 3 words. I'd want to go for 2, I suppose. Crazy journey.
Oh, nice. Fabulous. I like that.
Crazy journey. And by crazy, I mean, not crazy, but as in having all sorts of unexpected happenings and joys and thrills and spills. So it's just been one crazy journey.
I like that. I think, the line's gone off. We were worried about that happening. Did you want to nip and turn it back on quickly, and we'll just summarize the last question? So just for those listening, at the start of the podcast, we spoke about how Rob has an eco light in his office where it turns off after 20 minutes or so, and we almost got through the whole podcast without it.
I obviously wasn't waving my hands around enough. That's something my sister teases me about. I need to wave my hands around less, and that means the light goes off.
Well, you can report back now and say, it went off.